For our first meditation, we go back to verse 3 to experiment with the instructions here. Don't engage disturbances, and emotional reactions gradually fade away. So don't engage disturbances. And emotional reactions gradually fade away. So that's the meditation instruction, not to engage disturbances. So what that means is to relax into a kind of sitting where you don't manipulate your experience. You leave it as it is. So it is a very precise way of doing nothing. So it's not like a doing nothing in the sense of spacing out or something like this. So it is really a very precise technique, difficult actually, because we have a strong instinct towards comfort and a strong aversion towards discomfort. So what we usually try to do in anything, in any moment in our life, and then also in our spiritual practices, to move towards comfort, to feel better, and to avoid the discomfort. And that's suffering. So the suffering doesn't come from the discomfort, the suffering comes from how we relate to it. So this means also that as an insight or as an intention, we accept the truth of discomfort, and that there's no way that we can come to a swell place, either because we move to, I don't know, where do you move in Zurich? Here, so, to the lake or something. So we accept that wherever we go, it sucks. So better make friend with discomfort, and even not only make friend, but grow with it. So probably most of us, we have still that kind of intention or that motivation to use meditation like as a relaxation practice, or being more focused, or just feeling better. And that's kind of natural. It's nothing wrong with that, but that's not spiritual practice. With that intention, you have not entered yet the path being described in Tibetan Buddhism. So that's the practice of non-interfering, non-manipulating, non-controlling. And that doesn't mean that the controlling methods are wrong or that they are not useful to learn, but this is a very different approach. Don't engage distractions, and spiritual practice naturally grows. So distractions, or sometimes also called hindrances. So probably those of you have received teachings or meditation, or there's this list of 5 hindrances. And here in this practice, there are no hindrances. Nothing is a hindrance. Everything becomes support in meditation. So like being all over the place with your mind is not a hindrance. It is support of your meditation. How does it become support of meditation? Is you become non-judgmentally aware. You're just present to the madness. Keep awareness clear and vivid, and confidence in the way arises. So keep awareness clear and vivid. This is not, the practice of shamatha with object, where you calm down the mind. This is the practice of recognizing there is always something already clear and vivid, something which you can't make more clear and vivid. So let's say you have an experience of dullness. That which is aware of the dullness is not dull. So, or you are all over the place, you're restless. That which is aware of that restlessness is not restless. It just knows. It's just knowingness. and that knowingness is unmoving. It is the one thing which is presently, which is always there, because otherwise you wouldn't have an experience. So in other words, we become independent from the content of from our experience. We kind of don't care, not in a resignation, not in a kind of I don't care. It's called equanimity. So it is an open, rather loving, whereas loving does not really fit because it's not like an emotion, but it's a goodness, an aware goodness, because it is non-judgmental. It doesn't reject anything. And then he finished with rely on silence. So here, rely on silence. So that's the question. So what does he mean with that? You know? And here it's not a silence which depends on your mind calming down. It is the silence which you can, which is present all the time, in the background, pervading your experience. Could be also called space, or presence, or awareness. So that's what we rely upon. We start to become familiar. We start to rest, not because the content of our experience is good and comfortable, but we start to rest because we shift our sense of I into that which is looking, into that which is aware. So it's very radical. It's so radical that we also don't manipulate manipulation. We don't try to control controlling. We don't judge the judgment, because that's out of control. So if you notice, wow, I'm really trying to get somewhere with my meditation. That's instinctive. It's out of control. You can't then say, oh, I shouldn't judge. Don't judge in your meditation. It's bullshit, because we judge. So if judgment arises, it just becomes part of that, what you're looking at. So another instruction here is, to let go of grasping. Grasping in the sense of you want something or you want to get rid of something. In that grasping comes with with an inner, it can be very subtle, but there is it's not just, oh, I wish I would feel better. It's not just a thought. There's something, you can feel it in your body energetically, or there's sensations in the body connected with it. There's like a contraction. You're not satisfied with what is, and you can feel it. There's sensations in your body of that restlessness, of that this is not good enough. I want to be something else. I want to have another experience. Hey, universe, it's not good enough. I don't like this wave. It's too small or too big. So we learn, how to. So the grasping happens. So you notice, wow, yeah, I really try to manipulate my experience. That's out of control. It's just It's happening. But that in that moment, by not trying to judge, by not judging it, by not trying to get rid of it, you become just aware. You become, that's how grasping feels. That's what I'm doing right now. And then you can learn, maybe initially with some instructions, so you can say to yourself, let go. You don't know exactly how. Yeah. So don't try, so let go, yeah, but how to let go? Just let go. Something in you knows how to let go. Let go. It's like, let go. Something in you knows how to let go. You don't need to understand how to let go. But it is a bit of like it is a bit the art to learn how to release the tension in the body. So you notice now I tried this, I don't like. This is, to be tired, it's horrible. I don't like that. I'm ashamed of being tired. I shouldn't be tired. So then you notice that, and it comes with this contraction in the body. And then maybe I say something like let go, or let be, or allow. Different words work for different people. And then you feel like, yeah, I don't need to make a problem out of it. It's okay. It's fine. I'm a human being. I have worked the whole week. I'm tired. It's normal. It's a consequence of the way I live right now. That's how it is. I can either fight it and be ashamed of it, or try to do something about it, or, and sometimes this is helpful, or I can also try the opposite almost, and that is I just accept. I love it to death. I love it to death by not finding it.
Can I ask you something? I also feel tired many times, or let's say, I also have the situations where I really try to fight it, and then it kind of feels like when I redirect my thoughts, let's say. So first there's the suffering, I'm really, really tired, but then I try to find my consciousness or my awareness about it, and by simply having really thoughts about it, let's say I find the whole frame again. I find, let's say, my direct thoughts that say, okay, this is only natural, or for example, I start wishing thanks to people, or peace to people, and this is where I find my consciousness again. Or is this simply redirecting my thoughts to something else? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
or is this just, let's say, diverting my attention to something else and leaving the tiredness on the side?
Yes,
and not really coping with it.
Yeah, it is. So it is directing your mind to something else, but that's a good thing to learn skills like that. So it's and in this, like as a beginner, this kind of instructions you give yourself, they are helpful. We need to do that until the point where you have developed the capacity to relax into what you call consciousness without any guidance. It's like a natural, just, your system knows how to go there. You don't need to tell it. So it's fine. So whatever supports you in this journey of your meditation session to come to a place of more contentment, a place of more relaxation, that's where you go. And it is directing your mind somewhere else, but it's directing your mind towards something wholesome.
But Stefan, is it just in the session or is it in life? Because I know I kind of sense, because I'm having the same thought. So like, do you not by that become complacent and stagnated? And really what you should be dealing with is that you don't get enough sleep. You know what I mean? But you are so content with it and you let go, so then you don't deal with your problems, so to speak, right?
Yeah, that's...
so I mean, that's just an example, but that could be anything.
That's
do you not deny the actual problem?
That's a possible trap. But since you can talk about it, you are aware of that trap. So it's like, that's called spiritual bypassing. So using practices to kind of bypass unnecessarily step of care, self-care, or a necessary step of your psychological development. So you try to use meditation to bypass the fact that you're not taking care enough of yourself. You don't eat well, you don't have enough exercise, you don't sleep enough. So you bypass that. Yeah, so we need to know about this, and then we can correct that. But the other thing is, when you relax into the stillness, this stillness is very, very smart. It's super smart. It's much more smart than your rational mind. So when we relax into the stillness, we don't become complacent. We actually become more active. We are, as you know. I mean, if you have a good rest in the weekend and you go to work, you are just more productive, more present, because you are more in touch with that.
So meaning that the need to take care of yourself then comes not from dissatisfaction, it comes from wisdom, so to speak, or from recognizing that there is something that can be done.
It needs a bit of, it needs probably in the beginning a leap of faith, that there is an intuitive intelligence within you. It's part of the Buddha nature, it's one of the 5 wisdoms of our Buddha nature, which then has no space to radiate into your life. The other thing is what you ask about, bringing this into daily life. So in meditation, we condition us into wholesome processes. So let's say now we're talking about the wholesome process of allowing things to be. So the wholesome process of loving awareness. So, and when we do this again and again, of course, this will also happen more and more in daily life. Even if we don't, we can also ask question, how can I remind myself in daily life and so, but it's actually an automatic process. The system of your mind, this network of your mind, will slowly figure out, hey, it's good to be more relaxed. Equanimity is good for us. Do you all agree? Not all the different personalities, or what you want to call it, the different aspects. So do you all agree that, to get the teenager on board is maybe difficult, but so the more mature aspects of your personality, many of them will agree. And so, and then it will just happen in daily life that you become more resilient towards what is happening. You don't freak out with everything, but because you have conditioned a process which becomes automatic. So how to bring it in daily life, apart from, kind of using some reminders, meditations apps, mini meditations and so on. But one of the main ingredients of bringing it into daily life is to do the practice often and regularly, and to trust that it will just, the operating system of equanimity will be just slowly installed. Okay, so let's sit quietly. So just sitting. In this practice, it's actually quite good not to use the word meditation, because it comes with this all strange ideas, what should happen and what is a good meditation and a bad meditation. So when you call this practice just sitting, then it's just sitting. I can just sit. I'm already doing it. So the work is done. Yeah, just sitting. This is it. And doing what you're doing, feeling what you're feeling, thinking what you're thinking. This is very difficult for people who have trained themselves into kind of control meditation, but give it a chance, see what happens. And so you adjust the posture, not too sloppy, not too tight. And then you allow meditation to happen. So you notice how you are, what do you bring with you. It's a kind of check-in, can be called check-in, like checking the weather. And then you allow awareness to slide into the body, with your attention. You can do a kind of a bit of a body scan almost, like down into your feet. Doesn't need to be precise, just like in general, you become more aware of your energy, or you could say your felt sense in your body. And you make a habit out of welcoming. An image here is that you are a gracious host who relaxes with guests, even if they are somewhat unruly, misbehaving. So you relax, you're a gracious host in the in of your body. And there can be a bit of anchoring with the flow of the in and out breath, or the sensation in your hands. How's your belly, your shoulders, the face? And thoughts, they are like the cars outside, so they come and go, they have their own life. It's a bit like a conversation in the other room, which you're not interested in. So it's neither interesting nor is it a problem. It's just, and they drive there, back and forth. They're not really disturbing the cars. So the same with the thoughts. Ken MacLeod uses this image of leaves in the autumn sky. So that's how we allow the dance of our experience, the flow of our experience, like leaves or feathers in the wind, dancing. If you notice that you get entangled or engaged, and maybe with the out breath, you can relax, and if necessary, you anchor yourself back to the breath in a light way, or to your hands, so you have something to return to. You give up thinking, with the exception of wholesome pointers, wholesome instructions or images. Returning and resting, finding a place of rest in the midst of your experience as it is. If something comes to the foreground, a pleasant or unpleasant sensation, allow that to happen. You look and you rest. Your awareness is open. The cars can be a reminder of how big the space is. Even a car can drive through. You gravitate towards that, or you dissolve back into that which is undisturbed, like the depth of the ocean is undisturbed from the waves. And you'll notice the non-static, vibrating, flowing nature of the content of your experience. They are like feathers in the wind. No big deal. So the sound now could be seen as disturbance. Here in this practice, it becomes support. It amplifies the space. It amplifies the silence. Whatever you experience right now, you experience within your mind, within consciousness. And it's empty. It has no substance. Flowing appearances, like rainbows. Whatever happens is just seen for what it is. Nothing is excluded. You can't do this wrong. You're returning and resting. Allow yourself to lose interest in stories and thinking. No thought will bring you home. No thought will bring you into genuine peace. So you don't try to stop the thinking, you just lose interest. So as an addition, we can play with retrieving any sense of me and mine. So imagine you erase that word from your consciousness. Me, mine, myself. This is not me, this is not mine. I'm that which is aware. of the most important aspects of this kind of practice is that there's a sense of warmth, that there's a loving gaze, and so people can introduce that by calling upon their role models or mentors. And they can be Buddhist or non-Buddhist, people you met or you're just inspired by. So you introduce their presence, their gaze, their voice into the meditation. So there is a warmth and a kindness in the view, in the knowing. As if you're bathing in the warm sun. So I call upon the blessings of the Buddha, the protection, Dalai Lama, Jesus, Lama Zopa. There is the movement of the conditioned mind, the display of your karma, coming and going, appearances in consciousness. Like a river flowing. But then there is something else. Space, knowing space. Silence, presence. The non-moving mind. Always in peace. Ajahn Chah calls it the one who knows. What does he mean by that? The one who knows. The one who knows the I, the one who knows the mental image of your body, the one who knows the mental image of this room, the one who knows your name, your roles, your problems, the one who knows. And then you rest as the one who knows. So then we invite this stillness, peace, that you might have had glimpses of, to gather in your heart area, maybe in the form of a lotus or a sun, or the Dalai Lama, Tara. You can lightly breathe into the heart area. You feel that from your essence, from the source. Loving stillness is spreading throughout your whole body. From the goddess within, from Tara within. And then it spreads out into your surroundings. And instead of needing something to feel complete, to feel whole, you become the source of wholeness, of peace in your life. From the Tara within, from the Buddha within. And then it is Tara who looks through your eyes and moves your mouth and fills your hands. It's the stillness. And that's why we're here today, to make contact with the stillness within, for the benefit of the people we meet, in particular for our children. That's the path of the Bodhisattva, to find the stillness within for the benefit of all. So, the instructions within the Tibetan tradition who points to consciousness itself, or who points to the nature of mind, the knowingness. If you never have heard that before, obviously, it's like, because you don't have an reference object for this word. And it's something which can't be expressed through words. So these words, they are pointers towards something which is actually very precise. So it's not like fluffy kind of new age language. So it's a very precise experience, but strangely, it's such a different kind of experience. You wouldn't even call it an experience, because it's not an experience. And so, because experience come and go, it's that which is a way of experience. And so for those who kind of just go blank when I say stillness or peace or presence, because you don't have a reference object of that word. I mean, being blank in that moment is very good. Yeah, so it's a good direction. Yeah, it's worse if you think you have understood what I say. Yeah, like if I say presence or the nature of mind or consciousness, and you have a sense, yeah, I know what he's talking about. Wrong. It's not an object of knowledge. So it's better to be blank and to be kind of confused and not know what it is, because you're not going to know what it is. But this is really like that's like kind of the essence of the Tibetan tradition, the transmission of that. Not only of the Tibetan tradition. So that's kind of where all Buddhist traditions align in the experience of the nature of mind, or Ajahn Chah from the Thai forest tradition calls it the one who knows. And it's probably the same experience in Christian mystic or in other traditions. So don't give up on that. And just kind of you do your things, the things you understand step by step and so on, study, meditating, all that is useful. But try to also bring this again and again through different teachers, through different instructions, through this text, because Togmay Sangpo is pointing to that. And slowly, slowly it will dawn upon you. So I know many people who listen to me since 10 years or something like that, or even longer. And sometimes it's like after 5 or 8 years, and they got quite some years maybe where they get upset with this kind of instructions because they have no clue what I'm talking about. Which is good, because I also don't know what I'm talking about.
So why are you talking then?
Yeah, because that's one way to transmit the experience. Yeah, so I mean, if it is also transmitted through the silence between the words. Yeah, so it's both. Both can be good pointers, but it could be also obstacles. The words can be obstacles, but also the silence can be an obstacle, because in silence you might just space out. So what I wanted to say, and then after 5 or 6 years, they come to me and they say, "Wow, I think you said it in a different way, because suddenly I know I recognize what you're talking about." And I say, "No, I say the same things since 12 years. But something in you has changed, and there was suddenly a shift." Yeah. Wow. It's so simple, it's so close. Why I have not seen it right the first time? I could have seen it right the first time, because there's nothing to understand and nothing to do. But all the other practices we can do and we can understand, they prepare us. They make us ready. And then we recognize that in one way all these practices were not necessary, but they were absolutely necessary, because we needed to directly see that they are not necessary from a point where we can be only through that kind of unnecessary practices. So we make a long journey, yeah, the journey of the hero, and then like up in the mountains, you meet this wise woman, the witch, and she looks at you and she says, "Oh, girl, just go home. It's there, the Holy Grail, the treasure you're looking for. It's go home." And then she goes home, and she finds the gold under the fire in the kitchen or something like that. It's a very common story. So, in a way, the journey was not necessary because the gold was already there, but it was absolutely necessary because she had to exhaust herself by trying to find it somewhere else, and then she needed to be pointed back. That, as Lama Yeshe, for example, in his book Introduction in Tantra, he points to this again and again. Like he says in the beginning, you have everything to be complete right now. It's just a matter of recognizing it. Or he says, we are whole already. Or he says, we are already gods and goddesses right now. It's a matter of making contact with that and recognizing that and relaxing into that. So don't give up on that and try different teachers, even from other traditions, because sometimes you can kind of pick up a word, an instruction in the Advaita Vedanta or from Zen or from Christian mystics, which are kind of, it has to do with your trust into the one who gives the message, but it also has to do with your openness and your the words which speak to you, the way it is expressed, the way how the unexpressible is expressed. And it can be music, it can be places, it can be nature, particular like beautiful places, nature places where there have been people recognizing this, meditators. It's really helpful. It's like you go to a place like this and suddenly, you feel it. You can't put your finger on it, which is a good sign, but there's this. So I think we covered now 4. So we came to death. So I want to kind of fast forward. So as I said, the text can be divided into the Lamrim teachings, gradual awakening teachings, and the first 12 stanzas, including bodhicitta. And then comes Lojong, and here Lojong particular with the practice of Tonglen, giving and taking. So I will pick some of the Lojong verses. So I will drop some, but I want to start with verse 6, which is also an important topic in the Lamrim, and that is a healthy relationship to a mentor, to a teacher. Yeah? So I just want to, it's a very complex topic obviously. I just want to bring it up, say a few random things about it, and then we have a break, and then we go into the Lojong teachings. So this is verse 6. With some teachers, your shortcomings fade away, and abilities grow like the waxing moon. Yeah? With some teachers, your shortcomings fade away. This is interesting because, when you're around some teachers, like Lama Zopa, you're just a better version of yourself, because it's just not appropriate to, or it just doesn't come up. So if I go, and that was kind of my main refuge for like the first 15 years of my practice, when I got into a kind of a crisis, doubt or all kinds of stuff, then I knew, although I didn't really believe it, but somehow I knew I just need to bring this body into the proximity of Lama Zopa, and something would happen. And it always worked. Yeah? So as long as I managed to drag myself back, I was fine. It's like you go into the presence of a teacher, and I'm not saying this will happen to you when you meet Lama Zopa, because that's very different and very personal for all of us. Yeah. But for me, it was like I just needed to go there, and things would just clear up, and kind of even my questions would disappear, because they became meaningless. So that's with some teachers, your shortcomings fade away and abilities grow like the waxing moon. So that's like, I mean, if you have a connection with Lama Zopa or any other kind of teacher on the master level, say, just hanging around will change you. You don't, I mean, even if you just cook, I mean, no meditation, no teaching, not at all. Just being around will change you, for sure. So that's what we are seeking. Hold such dear teachers dear to you, dearer than your own body. We have heard Togmay Sangpo saying this stuff before, like practicing as if your hair is on fire, or practicing, that is another verse, but the first way he says, practicing constantly day and night. Yeah? So these are like this. So dearer than your own body. So again, what the poet Togmay Sangpo, what does he want to say with that? Dearer than your own body. He just wants to say it's really important, very important, super important. Yeah. Hold such teachers dear to you. So that's a good question. How can we do that? There's a lot of teachings in the Tibetan tradition. For some people, it's more difficult to find a suitable teacher than a marriage partner. In a way, it's more important. Because your marriage partner, I mean, she is also a goddess, but but she might be equally confused as you. So which is a good thing, but the bond to a teacher is in a way more important and equally. I mean, we are not going to marry just anyone. Yeah. I mean, some people try like they live together for 4 or 5 years, and stuff like that, and maybe they say after 10, 12 years, yes, so I'm going to marry you. So the same is for teachers, maybe even more so. Yeah. That we check them out before we create a deep bond. So if you are drawn to the Tibetan tradition, and probably you are at least a little bit, otherwise you wouldn't be here, then you can't avoid this topic, because within the Tibetan tradition, the relationship to one's teachers is crucial. It's a very important part of one's practice, and it has a lot of advantages, but of course there is also a lot of traps. Yeah. So it's a quite delicate and difficult process and part of one's practice to find a healthy relationship to a teacher. Do you need a teacher? It depends. Yeah? So, I mean, definitely, there's a big yes if you want to enter the tantric path, the Vajrayana. I mean, that's actually because Tibetan Buddhism is tantric Buddhism. So that's why in the Tibetan tradition, the relationship to the guru, to the lama, is so important. Yeah? But maybe that's not your thing. Yeah? So in other Buddhist tradition, like in the Theravada tradition, you have teachers, yes, of course, because you want to learn from the masters, you want to learn from people who are more experienced. That's kind of obvious. Yeah, I mean, if you want to become a master piano player, you're going to the best piano player in town. You're not going to learn piano playing. I mean, if you want to be a concert piano player, by looking at YouTube videos and reading a manual on how to play piano. And we are talking about something much more difficult than becoming a master piano player. It's like to become a master in meditation is much more complex than becoming a master. So of course you would want to learn from human beings. There is something magic. I mean, even if you learn is like a carpentry, no? Or like laying bricks or something. They have also a lineage. It goes back like centuries, and some of them are actually aware of that. So to get kind of the embodied experience of handicraft, so let's say you want to become a master carpenter, you're going to need that human connection, and you can't get it through books. You can't get it. You can't figure it out yourself. It's something in the way your master, the carpenter, works, how he touches you, how he hands you the tools, how he plans things. And this is something you can't get to. That's why I'm sound a bit dogmatic again, but this is my conviction. Yeah. So if I've learned a few things in my life. So for example, at one point I learned riding, horse riding. So I want to have a good teacher there. I want him to touch me when I sit on the horse. I want to see him riding. And then something happens. So the same is with meditation, with the spiritual path. In the Tibetan tradition, it's quite normal to have many teachers, like Lama Zopa, he has like 30 gurus or something like that. I met quite a few of them. They are all dead except His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but I have been around long enough, so I've met some of his teachers. So it's not like you need to kind of bond to like just one teacher and then that's it. So because actually that would be a bit unhealthy, I think, because every teacher is partial. Yeah. So like, I mean, if you just would listen to Lama Zopa, I think that's not particular for us as Westerners. That's not. I mean, maybe this sounds a bit heretic, but he doesn't know everything. So he can't. I mean, if I want to learn something about how to handle trauma, it's not Lama Zopa I'm going to ask. I need another mentor there in that area. Also, if I want to have really like a deep teachings on emptiness, I mean like rational teachings, like philosophical teachings, then I'm not going to Lama Zopa. then I'm going to some geisha I like, who has studied this stuff and who can teach me that. And if I want to learn shamatha meditation, I definitely don't go to a Tibetan geisha because they don't meditate. So I rather go to, a Thai forest monk who sat like 30 years in his hut and actually has reached shamatha, because that's what they do. So then I go there. So, and then that person which shares and guides me in the practice of shamatha becomes the mentor. And then I hold that teacher dear to me, dearer than my own body. I'm not there yet, but so it is important. So what that means is a relationship to a teacher needs to be cultivated like any other relationship. It's not a passive thing. You can't grab these things for free. And that's kind of an attitude, something. Everything needs to be for free. Like, where can I get this for free? This is not how it works. You can't get, you can get a lot through kind of listening for free on YouTube or on the podcasts, and so that you can learn a lot. I'm not denying that, but the real thing is not for free. So cultivating so like if you have a relationship which is precious to you, like to a friend, it's not enough to be passive. So you cultivate it. You make time for it. You respond to the messages. You put some energy into the relationship. And that's, this is like hold such dear teachers dear to you. It's like something you do, is something active. And so in my case, and I see that also in other students who have been practicing a few years, I mean, Lama Zopa is kind of my, you could say, the root teacher or main teacher. But then I have had like different relationships to different teachers, and some of them they were like for, let's say, 3 to 6 years or something like that. So I learned from them, and I cultivated the relationship with them, and then kind of I still kind of I keep connected with them, but then something else became more important. So then I work on something else with a different teacher, and then the relationship to Lama Zopa is more like in the background. Yeah. One way to reflect a bit on the traps, the possible traps, is to go to Alex Burson. He's a translator and a Buddhist teacher. He lives now in Bern. And he wrote this book, Cultivating a Healthy Relationship to a Teacher. It's also online for free. Yeah? But actually, if you want to really benefit from that book after you read it, I suggest that you make a donation to his website. This thing that the Dharma is for free is bullshit. Yeah. There is this story, in the Lam Rim where there is this guy who comes to his teacher and he wants to make a big offering, so he brings his whole livestock as an offering, and he leaves behind one sheep which is sick. Yeah, and then the teacher says, "Oh wow, that's so." I mean, the teacher receives the offering, and then he asks, "What's with this sick sheep back? Why didn't you bring it?" You can make out of the story what you want, but it shows like it's not like, I mean, there needs to be like a exchange, and that does not need to be money. It's your practice, it's your question, it's showing up, making yourself vulnerable, sharing, being in relationship. Yeah. Otherwise you could, it's so easy to hide. So Alex Burson, he talks about the possible traps, particular for us Westerners. I mean, most of the time what I observe, this kind of guru relationship goes really bad in the West. We can't handle it. Some people try to copy the Tibetans. It looks ridiculous. Yeah? It doesn't work. It's like fake, like pretending. Yeah? And then there is this idealization. So somehow we don't manage to see the teacher as a channel for Buddha wisdom, and see him as a human being at the same time. It's super difficult for us, and the Tibetan managed to do that. So on one hand, they are like, yeah, and it's genuine, and on the other hand, they relate to their teacher as human beings, and they bring this together, the humanness, the perceived shortcomings, where the teacher maybe has a blind spot, and so on and so on, and still being able to see the guru as your doorway to the communication with the Buddha. It's very difficult. That's why in the Tibetan tradition they say, don't choose a guru from your own valley. Take a guru from the other valley, so you're not so close. Yeah. Because it's difficult. You need to be a very mature practitioner to hang around as a servant to a teacher. Because you will see, wow, I'm following this guy and he's still addicted to coffee. He still worries to miss the plane. I mean, come on, you're a fully enlightened Buddha. You should be over it. As a mature practitioner, you would actually see this would actually enhance your faith and your trust in the teachings and the teacher. That you see the teacher also as a human being. So it doesn't become an obstacle when you perceive shortcomings. It becomes an encouragement and fertilizer for one's practice. So one of the biggest mistakes being done in the West is this over-idealization. And in the Tibetan tradition, they do they do the full-on guru thing. I mean, it's like, maybe you have seen it like on thrones, and when they come into the room, there's music and stuff like that. And it's actually surprising how it works, in the West. Of course, only with some people. For some people, the connection with the Tibetan tradition is finished right there. Yeah. But the Tibetans, they managed to do that wholeheartedly. And then after, when they drink a tea with their teacher, they relate as human to human. So this over-idealization, like to make these teachers as superhuman, which is a practice, and it has its benefits, and you need to understand why you do it and with whom do you want to do it. So you need to, that's your choice. So you need to empower someone to be the Buddha in your life for you. And that's completely up to you. I mean, some people, for them, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the super guru, fully enlightened, actually the Buddha of compassion himself. For many, many people, he is a Buddha professor. And what is he? Really? Empty. He is neither a fully enlightened Buddha, nor is he a Buddha professor. Neither the fully enlightened Buddha is findable, nor the Buddha professor is findable. It's made up. So, but then we think, when the Tibetans say, see every action as of your Buddha as an activity of the Buddha, we think they mean it literally. And then if we perceive shortcomings, the whole thing, then we lose trust in the teacher. And how could he do these things? He's fully enlightened. And then people get into this crisis. They lose faith. It's very hurtful if you have this over-idealization and this expectation that, Lama Zopa can teach you how to use an iPhone. I don't go to Lama Zopa to learn an iPhone. I go to Lama Zopa to learn about the nature of mind of bodhicitta. And that he does not know how to use an iPhone is not for me. For me, it's not like, okay then. So this is, and actually this journey of, over-idealization and then perceiving shortcomings, trying to handle that, it's very rich, very emotional, very it's not something, which is where you remain like untouched by it. Alex Burson has this really if I would be able to say only one thing about this, and I would quote Alex Burson saying, rely on the qualities while not denying the shortcomings. Rely on the qualities, see the qualities, but don't deny the shortcomings. That's actually also good marriage advice. Yeah? Rely on the qualities, see the qualities, focus on them, but don't deny the shortcoming or the perceived shortcomings. And with that you can also, because sometimes it happens that the teacher, gets into trouble and you feel that you need to keep a distance. So you don't want to stay engaged with that organization or with that teacher, but still the bond, you don't want to destroy the bond. That would be very harmful for your own practice, because he has been your door to Buddhahood. So if you cut that bond, you cut the bond to your Buddha nature. So you want to preserve that bond. So, and that would be then the way. So you focus on what you have received, what this teacher opened for you, but you don't deny the shortcomings. You don't shut your mouth when there's something to criticize. You speak up. You correct. Maybe that is what the teacher wants to teach you. Who knows? So this were just some random reflection from my side. It's not like covering the whole thing. It is complex. But Alex Burson is a good resource to kind of reflect a bit. So what is it with me and teachers? Yeah? So like there is, for example, this, in some people, this sense, I can't trust anyone. They all want my money. I figure this, I'm so self-reliant. I can do this on my own. And they are all charlatans who are after power and money. And I can't trust anyone. because I have been hurt by the people who I loved. Yeah. So that's another thing which comes up in this topic for us to notice that there's something in us which has lost hope, which feels completely alone and doesn't want to reach out. So yeah, so that's one. And I mean, we are complex beings. So, and a relationship to a teacher brings up this stuff. So a healthy relationship to a master, I mean, if we talk about like the master level, will make your life really difficult. That's what he is supposed to do. Kind of to speed up the process, to stir up things. Yeah. In the beginning, they are quite nice, kind of to hook you. You know, like the Dalai Lama, everyone thinks he's this nice old grandpa, you know. And once the bond is strong enough, and he knows that you're not going to run away, he will, you know, point to that which you don't want to see in you, and will send you into the places where you're scared, where you wouldn't go alone. And that's how he speeds up the process. So, having said all of that, I'm not saying now you need to kind of feel some pressure. Okay, who's my teacher, and so on and so on. It comes. It's naturally. So we can do a lot to kind of prepare ourselves to be mature students. I mean, you know, sometimes there is this discussion of what qualities needs to have a teacher. Actually, for us, a very good question also: what qualities has a good student? And how can we prepare ourselves to be a good student, to be a mature person? So kind of, you know, not needing to play the father thing with the guru or the lover thing, because that's, you know, you're a mature person, you know yourself, you have addressed some of the things. So there does not need to be so much psychological drama in the relationship to a teacher. One thing maybe is helpful is when we distinguish different levels of teachers, because that also creates sometimes confusion. You know? So the people, like, they get the teachings on guru devotion from the Tibetan tradition, and then kind of they try to see me like that. You know, it's a huge mistake. So there is different levels of teachers. Like, I relate to my philosophy professor, the Geshe in Nalanda, in a different way than I relate to Lama Zopa. It's a different kind of relationship. There's both a bond, like you have different bonds to your child and a different bond to your husband and a different bond to your friend. They are different kinds. There's different rules for these different kinds of relationships. So I have like the guru relationship with Lama Zopa and 3 of his teachers. I kept it very simple, so that that it doesn't get so complicated. So Lama Zopa, 3 of his teachers. That's it. That's the teachers I received initiations from. And then I have philosophy professors, teachers. So there's particularly the Geshe in Nalanda, Geshe Jampo, and then a few others where I received some philosophy, Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist psychology teachings. And then I have mentors who are meditation instructors. So that's mainly Westerners. I don't find the meditation instructions given by Tibetans very helpful, because it's like they navigate a completely different mind than us. So it's very, I never really could kind of understand Tibetans. They are so different. They like to talk about emotions, but the Tibetan is like just a big mess because they don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I have, meditation instructors, mentors from different traditions also, not only Tibetan Buddhism, but also other traditions. And when I say mentor, I related to them. I also have some teachers I really like where I just listen to the teachings or I read books. Yeah? But I related to them. With quite a few, I have had Skype sessions. Yeah? So that's and so they know me, and I feel that I can be honest with them. I don't need to hide. Yeah. So I have like always someone mentoring my own processes. Yeah? I don't try to keep it inside and figure it out myself. And then I have mentors like who are more like in the psychotherapeutical. So I had like 3 kind of substantial psychotherapies the last 30 years. I mean, psychotherapists who went like 2 to 4 years or something. And that's also, they fall in, for me also into the category of mentors. And I learned a lot about mind and myself. And this was actually more, I mean, I've never had like a kind of mental crisis where I felt like I need to do therapy. For me, it was part of exploration, curiosity. So there are these different levels, and I relate differently to the different teachers. Like I don't practice guru devotion with a psychotherapist. Also, if I do the mentor bonding process, where I call the mentors and I feel the support, then I also add them there. Yeah. But like for the kind of traditional guru devotion, guru yoga practice, I just use Lama Zopa. So any questions about that? And then we have a break. Doubts, maybe a bit more personal, like where something you are, where you are.
Maybe you mentioned at the beginning how in the Tantra tradition, a guru or master is more critical than in the Theravada tradition. Maybe you can expand a little bit on that, because I don't know much about that.
It's not more critical, it's like the root. It's like, yeah.
Why?
That would be complex. So then I would have to go into Tantra and so on and so on. But that's like the fundamental quality of Tantra is that relationship to a teacher. I mean, this is like a technical thing, but for tantric practice, you need to have initiations from a qualified person, and yeah, you kind of need to have a Buddha in your life. Yeah, and of course, I could choose you to be that, because the Buddha nature of you is the same as a Lama Zopa. So, and that's what I do. So when I practice guru devotion, I'm not practicing guru devotion with the conditioned level and the habits of Lama Zopa. I'm practicing guru devotion and I bow to his Buddha nature. And why do I do that? Because by bowing to his Buddha nature, I open the connection to my own Buddha nature. So the outer guru, which is not the person in a way, is a reflection of my own Buddha nature. And it's my choice to whom I want to empower to be that. So I empower the person who empowers me. And this could be you, if there would be nobody else more qualified around. Yeah? But of course, you want to do this with someone where it's safe and someone who knows the path and who can also teach you, and so on and so on. And it seems to be the transmission of the experience of Buddha nature. It seems to be something which we can't figure out ourselves. It seems to be something which can be only pointed out in relationship. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's definitely quicker. So to kind of understand the answer of this question, one would need to look into it. So what are initiations, for what are they, and to study Buddha nature, and the benefits of relating to a teacher, and so on and so on. So I as I said, we are all on different paths, and there's so much which we can explore and heal within us and not develop. So it's not like we have to rush. Actually, the rushing often goes bad because people are not mature enough to have a healthy relationship to a teacher. And then actually that which was supposed to help becomes this huge obstacle and it goes wrong. So you need to have, with really some insight into your inner life and your psychological history and some interest in your kind of, your tendency to over-idolize or to mistrust. And so it's good to, And then also, in order to find a qualified teacher which you want to empower, of course it helps to know the teachings, because then you can see it's more easy to see the charlatans. And there's plenty of charlatans. Also in the Buddhist tradition. There's plenty of cults in the Buddhist tradition. And then if you mature yourself, then you can recognize cults. And you can actually then go into cults and learn from them if they have something good to teach. Because you're mature.
What does a Buddhist cult look like, for example? What do you quickly encounter?
What you quickly encounter is that the group is isolated. And there's like one, with Lama Zopa Lama Zopa is in the tradition. He's supervised. He has his teachers. He relates to teachers on his level, on the master level. And there's many other teachers going in and out of the FPMT. So the FPMT is embedded into the tradition. Whereas a cult is like they are isolated. So if it's, for example, in the Tibetan tradition, that would be an organization which isolates itself from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And then there's usually like one teacher, one. And in the library you see only the books of that one teacher.
That's, I think, Kadampa is like this.
That's an example, So, but there's others. There's like smaller groups also, So they kind of still, say, I have the transmission of this teacher, but then if you go there, you see that they are isolated. They form their own thing. Mm-hmm. So then, if you ask this teacher of that little club, so where do you go to teach? Who's looking after you? To whom do you report? They will say, I don't need that anymore. I'm enlightened.
isn't the kind of the purpose of getting a teacher or a guru is to sort of expedite, accelerate the process towards enlightenment? Because if you look at the Buddha, he never had a teacher. He got enlightened by himself. But obviously he did it through
It
many,
depends
many,
which
many
myth you
lives.
believe in.
Sorry?
It depends which myth about the Buddha you believe in.
Oh, but I've never heard he had a teacher. Everything I've read about
Then you have not heard the myths in the Tibetan tradition.
Okay. I've never heard
Of course, he has had teachers. He was already enlightened in that myth when he manifested on this planet. And he just manifested and played the game of becoming enlightened. I'm not saying this is what I believe, it's the myth. And it has a place. Yeah? So and it has a value. And some people take it literally, but myth is myth.
So you're saying in previous lives he had teachers? Because in
Yes.
they talk about him having many
Yeah,
many
so
lives
the
and-
Tibetan myth is that he had, there's stories about, his teachers, and when he developed bodhicitta somewhere in hell and so on and so on, and there's all these stories. And then in order to teach us, he manifested as Buddha Shakyamuni, and he played the game of becoming enlightened under the Bodhi tree.
In his life as a Buddha, also in the books I always read, he went to this Indian master and he so quickly in the meditation.
Yeah, that
he
was before.
accelerated already the master.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Even
that's
in the
right.
lifetime as the Shakyamuni
Yeah,
Buddha,
that's right. He had teachers also.
multiple in the book, at least I read.
Yes, but the enlightenment was something he kind of figured out himself in that story.
At that moment,
Yeah.
But like on the way, like the meditation, different types.
That's right. That's right. He was a very good practitioner in these provisional methods. Yeah. So the idea is that a relationship to a teacher accelerates the process, but for that we need to explore what does it mean to be a healthy relationship, to have a healthy relationship. What is that, and how can I cultivate a healthy relationship? Because often, if it's premature and people jump into initiation and things like that, then it actually doesn't become an acceleration. And sadly, actually, what happens, and particularly with some of the scandals now within the Buddhist communities, that this kind of immature relationships to teachers which people have destroys their practice completely. I mean, they lose their refuge. That's the saddest thing. And, the teachers who are causes of that, they really need our compassion because they really fucked up. And it's a huge responsibility to teach on that level as a master. And it has consequences, particularly when your actions then lead to the disregard of the refuge of people. And I'm in contact with quite a lot of people who are going through this right now. So we need to mature into a position as practitioner where a scandal like this will not,
What kind of scandals were there?
Power and sexual abuse and
in Tibet.
No, in the West and Western organizations.
Okay.
So we need to mature into a level of practice where you know that that the refuge you have taken when you take refuge in Buddhism is not the lineage, it's not the teacher, it's not the tradition, it's not the temple, it's your Buddha nature. Which is like the Dharma is like your Buddha nature talking to you, yeah? Like it's an expression, a sound expression of your Buddha nature. So that's what you take refuge into. So if your teacher who has been teaching you fucks up, then it would be really good to be in a position as a mature practitioner that it does not destroy your connection to your Buddha nature, and it also does not destroy the connection to the Buddha nature in that teacher. So that does not mean that we shouldn't speak up and talk about it, and they shouldn't teach, but they are not monsters. They are just human beings, just like you. I mean, we mess things up with our sexual energy, don't we? We manipulate people with our sexual energy. We fall into power traps. Yeah. So to kind of like exaggerate, that's what, anger and hurt does. Exaggerate the qualities, the negative qualities of a person. And all of them, including Trump, they have Buddha nature. And they act in stupid ways because they're confused about reality, just like us. So in this way, when you are a bit mature, you can also dare to learn from controversial teachers. Where everyone says, no, don't go there. He's like, yeah, go there. If you're a mature practitioner, then, and you have a good understanding, then you can actually benefit sometimes from, some people who have some strange ideas, but they work or they are helpful right now. So I love controversial teachers. If I see, this teacher is controversial, that's for sure. That's for sure for me indication. I'm going to check this one out. But I'm not going to empower this person to be my Buddha. I have done that already in a very safe place. So there's no need for that. So any last question? And then, yes.
You mentioned before that you personally have also taken psychotherapy, even though it's not for a specific, one major thing that's happened. Is that something you'd also recommend to go on?
Definitely. Absolutely.
This is any specific
at least to have
yeah,
I mean it depends. I mean but definitely to have some interest in psychological history, your psychological, and this can be some workshops or some readings, different things where you're also interested. So I found that really important, and I see in people how they meditate and they do everything right for 20 years. Not much happens because they have been wounded as a child and they can't feel empathy, and they do loving kindness all day, but nothing happens because they are wounded. The heart cup is empty. There's nothing to give. So and then they do a therapy 2 years and really a change. So I wouldn't say everyone has to do therapy, but some interest and some respect and a bit of there's also quite a lot of books written by Buddhist psychotherapists or Buddhist teachers. Many teachers of the Insight Meditation Society, for example, in the United States, they have been practicing as monk and doing and teaching for 20, 30 years. And many of them actually at one point turned to some sort of psychotherapeutical method, like focusing or somatic experiencing, or there's some psychotherapeutical schools which act, acceptance and commitment therapy, who actually grew from or was developed by Buddhist practitioners. So one can read these books. Rob Rees in the FPMT is a Jungian therapist, and he writes books about Tantra. And if you don't feel the need to do a therapy, and but to have some curiosity. And I mentioned the Thai forest tradition because I have friends there, and because if you want to learn about meditation in Europe, then go there because they meditate. That's what they do. So, and there's like monks who have been meditating like, for ages, like 30 years or something. And some of them are after 20, 25 years, because there's a psychotherapeutic school which is connected with the Thai forest tradition. It's called the Karuna Institute. So this is like full of ex-monks and they. So some of the monks, they then did therapy, and so what I've heard when I talked with some, the shift they experience, because I mean, some people maybe would disagree with that, but I have a sense that you can't figure everything out on your cushion because it doesn't come up. So you can be pretty enlightened somewhere in the cave, but then you go down and, maybe you found a family, you start a family, and then you have children, and then the enlightenment goes like this. Yeah, so it happened to me also. When after I stopped to be a monk, I was that enlightened. There's 0, so it went like this. I mean, I never thought I'm enlightened, but let's say awakened or more spacious or something like that. So yes. I really encourage you to be curious about focusing, for example, that you can even learn online, and you will immediately see the connection with meditation. And
What is it, Stefan?
it's a like a kind of meditative psychotherapeutical practice developed by someone called Gendlin. And it's like relating to the felt sense of your emotions in your body and talking to that felt sense and opening the message or the wisdom in that experience. So it's like a technique which is actually used by many therapists. So it has kind of spread into all areas. So there is a Buddhist teacher called Sultan Maljona. She is like one of maybe the only Western woman who is allowed to sit on the Lama seat in the Tibetan tradition, because you need to be a Tibetan man to sit on the Lama seat. Well, that's a disadvantage of the Tibetan tradition. They are very ethnocentric. Yeah? It's not like other traditions. There's American Zen masters. Yeah. But the Tibetans, they are very tribal mountain people. Yeah, so they are like, nobody gets in here. Particularly if you are white and if you're a woman. But she is, she got recognized as an emanation of Machi Glabtu, and she has developed this method called feeding the demon, which is coming from Chu. Some of you maybe have heard that. And so she uses this also.
So is it type of focusing is feeding the demon?
It's the beginning. So in feeding the demon, you connect with the difficult situation or the difficult feeling you want to work with your demon, and then you are guided into this process. Where is it in your body? Does it change? What is the shape? What is the color? So that would be like that's part of focusing also. Mm-hmm. And then you allow this to manifest in front of you as a being, and then you start the dialogue. So and that's what you do in focusing. You start a dialogue with different aspects of yourself. Like for example, if you have a hurt inside, like your mother screwed up in your childhood. So then with focusing, you would start to have a relationship with that hurt. And you would ask, what do you need? Or why are you here? Is there something we can figure out here? And it's amazing how we can access like the wisdom of our body through relating to these areas and talking to them. It's powerful. So that would be like a kind of non-psychotherapeutical way, the focusing. It is used in psychotherapy, but it's something, so it's quite grassroots. So there's like, they do these processes with each other, the participants. And I'm sure there's plenty of people here in Zurich which you can find who do this and who could teach you.
Is it similar to the chair therapy?
It's a bit connected. Yeah, that's the Gestalt. That's the Gestalt method.
Gestalt.
Yeah. Why there's inner voice dialogue. It's like similar.
For family constellation, same idea.
Yes. I mean, you could also do like a family constellation with your inner aspects. Yeah, like. Okay, so let's have. I want to lead meditation now, the mentor bonding process, which is connected with what I just talked about. So this is part of the formal practice within the Tibetan tradition to cultivate the relationship to a mentor. It's also called guru yoga. So yoga here in the sense of unification. So this is also something you will notice when you work with a therapist, with a coach, with a mentor, that he or she becomes a part of you. Like you integrate qualities, and they become like part of your inner dialogue. And sometimes you can really identify, well, now this is Lama Zopa talking, this is, so. And this is, if you enter the Vajrayana in a formal way, you receive an initiation, and then you have this commitment every day to do some kind of guru yoga. This is a bit strange, maybe, for some people. So, and it's definitely not like a practice which is accessible to everyone, but it's good to just play with it and see if there's something which you can use. So the process is like this: you invoke the presence of a mentor. It could be also a few. Actually, in the Tibetan tradition, it's always a few. Because they have, I mean, in their country they have so much space, so they love to fill the space. So it's that's like so I mean, we wouldn't make a painting like this, because we prefer to have things more simple. But the Tibetans, they boom, it's like Baroque. So you invoke the presence of one person or a few persons who are role models for you. And here it is good that, of course, it's necessary that you have some kind of connection. It doesn't mean that you need to have met that person, but like, if I would do this with Jesus, for example, and you are someone who has no connection to Jesus, he doesn't mean anything to you, Of course, then I can say Jesus, 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 and it wouldn't be helpful for you, because, or if I use the Buddha or the Dalai Lama, I might say some names, yeah, but that's just examples. It could be also, if that is more accessible to you, that you invoke the presence of someone like your grandmother or your grandfather, or someone, a good friend. Yeah, so that's more important, that it is really something which means something to you, rather than thinking, oh, I need to think about the Buddha or something. And then maybe with years of practicing and studying, maybe you start to develop a relationship with the Buddha. Yeah, so then you invoke. So while we invoke the presence, we keep in our mind what we work with is a mental projection. Yeah. So it's not like that we worship a person who comes and helps us. It's a mental projection. And where does this mental projection come from? From inside, from your heart. So when you recognize compassion in the Dalai Lama, you actually connect with the compassion within you. Otherwise, you wouldn't recognize it in the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama becomes a mirror for you. Like, you look at the Dalai Lama and you feel, wow, yeah, that's me. That's because all you see of the Dalai Lama is a mental projection, even when you are present in the same room. You never see a Dalai Lama out there. You always see just your mental projection. You see a mental hologram in your frontal cortex. And the qualities you see in the Dalai Lama, they are not in the Dalai Lama. They are aspects of your own psyche. So it's not like, there's sometimes this, worshipping. So it's not like worshipping, it's just confirming something which is inside of you. And you use, because sometimes there's a lack of trust in our own goodness. We feel like we are not as kind as the Dalai Lama, but we are, because we can see it. It's in us. If it wouldn't be in us, we wouldn't see it. You wouldn't know what it is. It wouldn't exist for you. But also, it's kind of a double thing. So you are aware that you're working with a projection, but throughout the beginning of the practice, you relate to it as the other. So I will guide this. So I will try to kind of invite you to have an experience of the presence. So it's not a visualization. That's not a good word. So it's not about having a clear image. It's not a shamatha practice. It can be, but so it's. I think it's better to use the word imagination, because we are not using only the visual consciousness, or the visual consciousness we don't use at all, because so that's what people like when you hear visualization. It's like, of course, it's something in the mental consciousness. You perceive it, like, let's say, could you imagine a pizza on top of my head? Yeah? So for some, it's quite easy. For some, it's more difficult. It depends a little. But I think because we are so familiar with the pizza, yeah, so we can all imagine a pizza on top of my head. And you have actually your eyes open. So we don't necessarily need to close our eyes to do the practice of Guru Yoga. So right now, when you see or imagine a pizza on top of my head, that's the mental consciousness. It's a mental image. Yeah? So you can all imagine. So sometimes people say, I can't imagine. You can. You just need to be familiar with what you imagine. Then you don't need to try to keep it stable, you know. I mean, they kind of have a bit their own life. It's like dream images, you know? They might move, or it's actually good that we have a sense of aliveness in their visualization, that they are not like statues, more like angels, beings of light. I'm not saying that we're calling angels. We're calling the angel from inside. So, and then there's a process of, you know, being in dialogue with that. We are not going to do that, but there's practices like confession, making offerings, prostration, and so on. So that's like you relate to your own Buddha nature through the image of your teacher. Then it also depends, you know, what kind of qualities you want to emphasize in your practice. Maybe you need a bit of a wrath, a bit of fire. So then you like standing up, saying no. So then you would imagine like you know, a more wrathful Tara or something like that. So it depends. Or you would choose a certain person who has a quality you want to integrate. So and then these images, they dissolve and they enter your body, and you reintegrate it. Yeah? So that could be also supported by a kind of visualization. For example, then you feel you imagine, you feel the Tara within, the goddess within. Or it could be also a symbol, like a lotus or a diamond or a sun, something like that. So and then in the end and that's like the unification. So it's the bonding, but also the unification. So you shift your sense of identity from the miserable I, from the good enough, not good enough I. I'm not good enough. I'm just not good enough. You shift your sense of identity from that to I'm the goddess. I'm actually that best part in me. That's what I am. And you kind of shift into that, and you look from there. So you look with the eyes of the Lama. And in that way, you bring forth these qualities. In the same way, you bring forth the qualities of I'm not good enough. If you just say that for 20 years and you believe it and you meditate on it every day, that's your reality. I'm not good enough. So we do it already, yeah? So it's not that we can't do it, because we already are very good at it. It's just, you know, what we identify with is maybe not the most empowering. So that's the practice of the Guru Yoga, and as a practitioner, you could do this practice every day. So connecting, doing some dialogue, dissolving, integrating, and then go into your relationship with the Dalai Lama in your heart. Moving like Tara, speaking like Tara, touching like Tara. Don't know if you do that sometimes. Like sometimes when I'm if I have a friend who has a quality I really admire, or you know, something I'm inspired by. So sometimes I ask myself, what would he do? Yeah. So that's a similar, what would he do? How would he act? My mentor. How would he move in this situation? And this is like an instant download. It's not like You don't need to go to a rational process of, you know, thinking a lot. It's just an instant, because you know what your friend is doing in certain situation and how he does that. So it's like you can instantly download a certain quality because you feel it, how it is to be like that. So just go along. If you get lost with other things, you just come back. So it's just an experiment, kind of testing if this would be something you would like to explore deeper. And if you find out this is not helpful for me, then that's also good. You know? So then you have that insight, and that's fine. So let's take a few moments to settle. So as in all practices, what is important that we are connected with the body. That we feel the practice, so that it is not a mental thing. So if you take a few moments to notice your posture, maybe you want to correct a bit, so your front is soft and open. Just allowing more meditative awareness to arise. How's your belly? And notice maybe the breath in and out. Maybe there's still some energy left from the break. And you give space. If you get too much entangled into the inner dialogue or into the mental images, you gently drop back into the trunk of your body. It could be that what is there is not that great, but here we explore what happens if you let that be okay. You open your awareness. And we could use the clarity and space of the morning as a reminder. Returning, finding a bit of rest in the midst of your experience. And then we invoke the presence of teachers, mentors, friends in space in front of you. This could be one person, could be a person you know, could be also a more symbolic person like the Buddha. Maybe you can also leave some openness so that some surprising guests appear. And you feel that they step into this room with their warmth, vitality, kindness, courage. This is like the morning sun arising after a night of terror, and you just bathe in the warmth with your whole body, from the toes to the top of your head. You don't need to do anything. Or it's like taking a bath. So you just relax into the warmth. And it's not only from the front, so there's a sense that you're surrounded by that presence, also from behind. So there's a light, warmth, bathing you every cell of your body. You feel the loving gaze, you see their smiles. You even smell them. There's a scent of loving kindness, like roses maybe, or something which opens your heart. And you can also hear them moving, or they might say something. And you make yourself naked and vulnerable. So the masks melt away. And you show up. Stay a bit with the breath. You allow whatever arises to allow within the loving gaze. Maybe you remember the voice. If it's a living person, then you remember how it is to be in their presence. And you allow yourself to gravitate towards a place of safety, a place of vulnerability, where you feel seen and loved. A place of forgiveness. You don't need to make it more dramatic than it is. It can be a gentle process of softening. The eyes, the smile, this mighty stillness. Also the laughter. If there's something unresolved in your heart right now, you just hold it into that space. Bathing. And just sitting in this light, this warmth, already makes you more than them. You become more like them. that warmth, loving kindness, forgiveness to touch whatever needs to be touched in you, needs to be seen, needs to be released. So this dream, this inspiration is also called blessing. So now one of your mentors comes closer, steps behind you and puts his or her hands onto your shoulders. And you feel the vitality and warmth in your shoulders to the touch of the Dalai Lama, Jesus, Buddha, Tara. Feel the warmth and vitality spreading into your body, down into your heart, down into your pelvis. And this touch says, I'm here with you, whatever it is. So you feel the warmth, the healing warmth, spreading into your body. I'm here with you, whatever it is. And whatever arises, resistance, is allowed in the loving space, in loving awareness, in compassionate presence. And then the mentors, the masters, teachers, they dissolve into the light, into the warmth, and it fills your body, particularly around the heart area, and you become aware of the goddess within. You become aware of the Buddha within, the Dalai Lama within, Christ consciousness within. And you can imagine it as a Dalai Lama in your heart, or a Buddha in your heart, or a sun. And from the Buddha within, from the goddess within, the warmth, the joy, the vitality starts to spread into your body and then radiates out into your surroundings. Here first, from Buddha to Buddha, from goddess to goddess, and then into your world, into your relationships. And you feel how your hands turn into the hands of the goddess, into the hands of the Dalai Lama. Your eyes, the way you look at people, what you say, the Also, you look at your own conditioning, your own habits, from your own wounds, from the point of view of the goddess within, the Buddha within. You see, you try to allow the word I, allow the word I am to land in that place. I am the goddess. I am the Lama. And whatever challenges are there in your past, in your presence, and also the coming challenges, you look from that sacred, indestructible core of your own being. The mandala of your life is pervaded by compassion. So, and whatever arises, thoughts, sensation, feelings, they arise, do their thing, and dissolve within compassionate presence. And here that compassionate presence also sees the emptiness. Sees that everything is like a dream. So it's full of love and free. You don't need anything from anyone. You relax into being home. No more seeking. And resting. And then you remind yourself that the goddess within, Tara, the Buddha within, is accessible at any moment. It is the uncorruptible, undestroyable essence. Wherever you go, whatever happens, whatever you do. There's that safe place within you. Which was never born and will never die. And then the mindfulness practice throughout the day would be to reconnect. So and there's the option of using the mantras of the teacher, or if you work with Tara, so you would use the Tara mantra, or the Om Mani Padme Hum with Avalokiteshvara, and you would throughout the day also images. So that's why people have these images. So they are just, you have them everywhere, I mean, where it's appropriate. And then, so if you look at them, you are reminded. And then you start to embody more and more the qualities of your mentors in your life, and you call upon them, particularly in crisis. So you don't do anything alone. You don't help anyone. Just I need to help. No, you're not alone with this kind of practices. You always have your protectors behind you. And you kind of, you feel that you become more a channel of unconditioned love coming through you. So that's, and it can be very, I mean, if you do this a while, like a few years, then you will more and more have a sense that actually, I mean, that the Lama is everywhere. So there's back to this sentence, practicing day and night, constantly. So that is like, there can be a constant practice of Guru devotion. Are there any questions about this practice? Then I will.
Maybe one question there, the traditional text, the Guru devotion, the Guru practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, like, I'm doing this, but sometimes a bit more
Mechanically.
Yeah, really mechanically, because I also, it's also this story of I have to do it. But then I was thinking, now that the way we did it, I feel much more connected. So I was just thinking, maybe it doesn't have to be like just reading the exact text.
It's absolutely not reading the text. I mean, the text is a guided meditation. It's not about reciting the words. It's really a meditation manual. A sadhana is a meditation manual. So if you know the practices, then you don't need to say the words, or you can find your own words. But there is also, something in just mindlessly reciting something, because it's not that mindlessly, because you say the words, and for us words are not just words, so because so it's not a bad thing, but of course whenever it is possible to make it more of an experience, then it's good to do that, because then you get more out of it, and the process becomes quicker. Rather, you can probably recite a sadhana your whole life and nothing more change. Maybe you feel a bit satisfied because you're such a good girl, but that's that's not very awakened. to be a good girl. So that's this is important. I think with all prayers, like taking refuge or whatever it is, saying mantras, doing these practices, that we make them an experience. And that's why I don't use the word visualization, or sometimes mistakenly I might use it, but it's this like 5-6 senses imagination. And some people, they kind of, because I said, like, we have different channels we prefer, like sense channels. So, some people, they visualize, maybe even they try to do it somehow with their eyes or something like that. And then I say something like, yeah, what's the scent of the Dalai Lama? And boom. Because some people, they remember scents. Like if they think about a situation where you think, yeah, to remember the situation, it is like to have these images and that people talk with each other. Where some people, when they remember something from the past, they can enter that through the scent of their grandmother. So they don't visualize the grandmother, they know how she smelled. And then you feel her love. Yeah. And then with this kind of commitments and doing them, and you should do them, it's always good to really deeply reflect, and that is a journey. What's actually the essence of this? What is this about? Yeah, and then you can do this practice in 2 minutes. You don't need to, read a text 2 hours. If you know what it is about, and it is about the union of wisdom and emptiness, the union of wisdom and love, the wisdom and method. So then you can do these practices quite quickly. So boom. I mean, I have done this, I don't know how many thousands of hours in my life I have done guru devotion practices. I mean, hours, Lama Sopa. So it's like, so I mean, if I say Lama Sopa, boom, boom, boom. That was my guru devotion practice for today. Yeah, and that's a practice I can do in any moment, at any time. And that's like the idea of the 6-session Guru Yoga, is to distribute the 6-session Guru Yoga throughout the day so that you reconnect with this. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. And that could be more genuine and more transformative than, sadhana. After 10 years, the only thing you have is like a worn-out sadhana. With coffee stains and something. But inside, not much happened. So it's so helpful to have a bit of childlike, playful thing with this. Like, as a girl, when you play house, you put the things and you put it up, and it's, and you cook the food, yeah, and it's all like wonderful. You really enjoy yourself, yeah. So let's play guru devotion, like with that, making offerings, pouring tea to the guru, and it's like, I mean, it's fun. It's also creativity and fantasy, and yeah. So the way the Tibetans do is, of course, they put butter lamps, but we don't put butter lamps. So what would be the equivalent, for you? What like if you imagine that you're a little girl and you want to cook a meal for the Dalai Lama. So what would that be? Not butter lamps. For certain, not Tibetan tea. I mean, who wants to drink rotten milk? Yeah, and then this practice doesn't become, this. I mean, it will be always. It comes and goes, so it can't be always an interesting adventure. But sometimes it really should be. And if we have a bit more time, then we can, take the time. Also, what I found helpful is like when I had to, when I was a monk, I had to do this long, Tibetan hours. So what helped me was to kind of focus on aspects of the practice which are meaningful for me at that point, like confession or making offerings or something like that. And then I would I get into that, and the rest would be more blah 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 blah, and then then something again meaningful would come. So that's also a possibility. Yeah. So we have the break soon, but I want to fast forward, kind of jump about over the other verses around the preparation practices or foundational practices. So there is this important section in the 37 practices which belong to what is called the Lojong teachings. So Lojong means transforming our attitude. So this is one of the most empowering insights you can have as a human being. And it's an insight which did not only arose in Indians and Tibetans, although they think that. We can also go back into our philosophy, in the history of our philosophy, to find that insight, and to put it in the words of a Greek philosopher, Epicure, it's not the things which are happening, it's how you relate to them. Yeah, that's Lojong, and this is like empowerment. Because there is things in your life which happened, you can't change. And there's things happening right now you can't change. Maybe you can make a contribution, but there's a lot of things we can't change. Like if you have been traumatized in your childhood, you can't change that. But you can change what it means. You can change how you relate to it. You can change does it contract you? Does it make you a bitter person? Or can it be a door to forgiveness, qualities you want to develop? This is very exciting. I remember the first time I came to that idea, and that was in the writings of Jean-Paul Sartre. I read him when I was like 16 and 17. And he talks about freedom. Yes? He says we are damned to be free. So he says, we are, so, and then he says, we are even free in terms of our past. Because we can change what it means to us. And it was like a thunderbolt for me. Because it's like, we can feel as victims of conditions, blame others, what they did to us, and so on and so on. And, that's one option. But we can literally change our past by first we give up the hope for a better past. So Get rid of that. So we don't spend like decades to hope for a better past. Yeah? Then we need to live the pain. So we need to feel the pain of what has happened. But then we can change the meaning of it. And that's something you can always do, whatever happens. And whatever will happen, and there will be very, very difficult things happening in your life. I see that with my clairvoyant power. That's my prediction. My prediction is there will be a damn problem after another in your life. And you will never get to the top of things. Because once you kind of forgot a problem, or maybe it was solved or not, there's just the next damn thing. I don't know if some people feel it's like negative or pessimistic. For me, it's like, wow, yeah, this is how it is. There is no problem. I don't have a problem because I have problems. It's not my fault. It's not like, yeah, I have this difficult background, so, and then I blame others, and so I have problems. No, we are human beings, we have problems. We have problems because we don't get what we want, and we constantly get what we don't want. And this is going on forever. So, but what we do with it, how we see it, how we relate to it, that's something we can start to change. And that's what the Lojong teachings do. So, what would be a good attitude towards your health challenge? What would be a good attitude, a healthy attitude, which would bring more ease, more something? Yeah? So that's the question. One option is to blame, to be dissatisfied, to be unhappy, to hope it would be different, to deny it, to get numb. So that's a kind of option. Or are there other possibilities? Could it be that we start to like problems? Well, that's one idea in the practice of Chö, which I've mentioned, is you call problems. You call the demons. You go actually into the place where there is a lot of demons. So you go consciously, you go towards it. It's a wonderful prayer, because that's the prayer which will be always fulfilled. It will be always answered. But I mean, we don't do it because, as I said, it's just coming. The universe already starts to gather to become difficult for you. There's already the conditions in place which bring the next challenge into your life. And you don't know what it is. It's usually just the right challenge, meaning it's the challenge which is a little bit too much. I mean, wouldn't we love to have the problems of our neighbor? Because that we could handle. But we have our problems. Yeah.
Isn't it that human beings like to have problems?
What?
They like to have problems. If they don't have problems, they
Yeah.
want to have problems.
Yeah.
They're looking for them. They're kind of, in a way, maybe not consciously, but
yeah, that's right.
they are never happy with what they have.
Yes.
They have to have something.
But this is an interesting insight, but I don't want to go there. But I want to formulate it in another into a simple sentence, and that is, we have this attachment to suffering, because So that's like, but this has not so much to do with transforming our attitude, but it's good to bring it up.
You mean aversion or attachment?
Attachment. So there is like because suffering is familiar, it feels safe. So some people are very protective. You hardly get in there because they really are so identified and attached to their suffering, to being a victim. It sucks to be a victim, but it's also a safe place. Yeah? So it's good to, to acknowledge that. And there is a fear in us to be free. There is a fear. So how long could I stand a day without problems? Yeah. Probably I would make something up. Yeah? Yeah. So, but now I want to, I picked one of the Lojong verses from this text, and you find this kind of style in other texts also, like in Shantideva, there's the patience chapter, it's like half of it is just bringing up all these situations where we are usually reactive. Yeah? Then there's also Arya Deva's The Wheel of Sharp Weapons. It's the same, like it's just one, it's quite interesting to see that we have the same challenges like the guys 600 years ago. Yeah? You can recognize all of them. So they bring this up, and then they give an alternative, a practice, something like that. So I give you an example. Even if you have done nothing wrong at all, and someone still tries to take your head off, spurred by compassion, take all his or her venom into you. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. Poison. Yeah. So these are so this is one example. Another example is when someone steals everything from you. Or another verse is, like even if you have done a lot to a person and suddenly this person turns against you. So these are really these examples where, and when we read this, there should be like, what? Yeah. What? No, this is unjust, completely unjust. I mean, it's big injustice. Even if you have done nothing wrong at all, and someone still tries to take your head off. Spurred by compassion, take his or her venom into you.
I think I've tried that in the past maybe a few times, but sometimes it felt like you actually amplify your own pain towards the situation. And that's when it felt really unhealthy.
Yes. Yes. So I will now shortly describe the practice. This is the practice of Tonglen, so taking and giving. So taking in what you don't want to have, and giving what you want to keep for yourself. So that's the practice of Tonglen. And this is one of the challenges in that practice. Yeah. So there's many ways to practice Tonglen, so many kinds of different styles. I have a whole playlist of different Tonglen meditations on my SoundCloud profile, so if this is interesting or sounds interesting for you, you can listen to it and experiment and play and find out what works for you. Yeah? So there's and now I will use the way I will use 4 steps, and it's coming from the teachings of Pema Chodron. Yeah. So if you want to look into the practice of Tonglen, she's I mean, the practice of Tonglen is like kind of her hard practice. So you will find this practice in all of her books. So the first step here in the practices of Tonglen is, she calls it a glimpse of Buddha nature. So before you actually go into the difficult situation, you reconnect with the biggest resource within you which is available. Yeah? So that would be, for example, you do a mentor bonding process first. Yeah? So you do the mentor bonding process and you have the Lama in your heart. So that would be one way. Or a Tara practice. Or you do like a practice of connecting with the sky-like nature of your mind. So it depends on how you personally can connect with that which is bigger than you. Because you're not breathing it into the egoic structure. The egoic structure can't handle suffering. Yeah? So that's one thing. So it's not like that you breathe in the cancer of your father into your egoic structure. You breathe it into that part of you which actually can handle everything. So you breathe it into the sky. So that's the first thing. And there's different, so that's also, I mean, a basic Buddhist practice is first to take refuge. So that's what you do first. First you take refuge. You're not entering this practice without allies. Yeah.
But, what about, for example, when you're at work and your boss starts telling you something?
I will talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. And
yes.
then how do you do this?
Exactly that. Yeah. But so you train yourself in a formal way, so that the process in itself becomes automatic. So it becomes a way of living. So what that means is like let's say I would be good at this, at the practice of Tonglen right now. So someone criticizes me. Yeah. So the practice of Tonglen would be to just open to what is, to the intensity of the situation, to the intensity of feeling heard. So I just open to it. I just experience the situation fully. I'm heard. And the person criticizing me.
This is very, very fast.
It's very fast. That's why you need to be good at it. Yeah.
And then you have to open.
Yeah.
Oh,
first.
Really,
The first.
Fast thing.
Yeah, but the first reaction will be probably that this contraction. Yeah. But in a teaching situation like this, it doesn't happen often that I'm thrown out of balance and people throw shit at me. Yeah. So it happens sometimes, but most of the time I can feel that, and I notice what is happening. I know my inner life, so I relax into the situation. I breathe it in, and then I come from a different place and not from my reactivity. So that's like Tonglen in a nutshell. Yeah. So breathing it in, allowing the contraction, because that's out of control. That will slowly. I mean, like 15 years ago, this would be much more.
The reaction would be much faster.
No, it would happen more often. Yeah. But so I noticed that it's it needs to be quite tough, you know, for me to have really a strong resistance. It still happens, but it's better. It's good. But still, so it happens. So I feel like leashing out, or hurting back, or something like that. So it helps that 10 people are watching. Yeah? It's actually a good training.
Space in between the other people.
So you
not
pause.
recognize that,
So you pause. Yeah, they record. Yeah, but people who come to my teachings, they know that I sometimes lose it. So that's fine. I mean, so then the giving. So that's the taking in, and I might do it a little with the breath. I don't emphasize the breath so much, but it's like, yeah, and then I respond to that person from a more spacious place.
But at that moment, you take in your own pain, let's say your own
both. I take
emotions.
the pain.
Okay, and also of the other person.
Yes. I take in the whole situation, because you recognize that a question or something being said, which is seen as a kind of an attack or a criticism from my side, that it might be a misinterpretation that happens, but it could be also, but if it's coming from a mean place, then there is the recognition that coming from a mean place is always a sign of suffering. So I try to talk, I try not to respond for my reactivity to that space with behind. Yeah.
For me, it's I think I can recognize my own feelings quite well, but when it's, like I say, a very instant situation, sometimes it leaves me confused even for 10 minutes to understand what the emotions of the other person exactly were and why this actually happened. Yes. So how can you actually respond to that?
It's a matter of training. It's a matter of training. So, like, part of the kind of preparation to this practice is to again and again reflect on common humanity, on why are people violent. So you train yourself over many years to see the softness behind the facade. So you don't need to go through reasonings anymore. So you see violence and you see the pain behind. It's instant. Yeah. And in the beginning, of course, you need to kind of go through some analytical process of, thinking about it and why are people violent? Yeah. I mean, some people ask this question. They don't understand why people are violent. I mean, this is clearly a sign of
aggressive, you mean?
Yeah, aggressive, or why people do rape people. Yeah. So then people ask this question, why? I can't understand this. Look inside. Then you can understand it. But you need to do that, deeply and honestly, and that takes time to see that you are potentially rapist. So yeah, so it is possible to do it quickly like that. But so the first step is
keep calm and coming from this.
Yeah, but keep calm is often keep calm. When people say keep calm, is often suppression.
Yeah, but
that's it.
Example,
and I'm not talking about.
It's work, for example, and then somebody says blah blah blah, and this is not true, and it brings you into trouble, kind of thing.
Yeah. So
then and then you need to be calm and not aggressive also, and then explain.
No, you don't need to be calm. You can't be calm because the first reaction is not controllable. It's a condition. It's a pattern which just kicks in. As I said, if you continue to do this practice, that pattern will lose its power because you are not nurturing it. So there is more. I mean, I can see it in myself. I mean, if I think back 15 years ago, I'm really embarrassed. Yeah, I mean, I was, horrible sometimes. Yeah.
Were you impulsive or?
No, just normal.
So that means you're not normal anymore.
No, just like, not
Yeah.
not particularly impulsive, but like, just being heard and trying to defend
Yeah,
a self-image,
That's it. That's
like
it.
something I make up, which then feels criticized, and probably it was not even a criticism. It's completely made up. I'm defending an hallucination. I get upset about the hallucination. So this is also part of this process of getting a bit more balanced with this. So that's the first thing, connecting with Buddha nature. The second, after the lunch break, I will do it in the terms of, in the way of a symbol, the symbol of the lotus and the diamond. Yeah? So that's like a symbolic representation of Buddha nature. And it's helpful or not. So then the second part is feeling the pain. So just open to, and so that's the breathing in. And in the practice, when it's, you don't need to kind of emphasize the breath so much, so because sometimes that then becomes confusing. But traditionally it says with the in-breath you feel the pain. So you open to the situation. So that's also what I mean with it becomes a style of living, because you bring that into wherever you into whatever contact you step in. Like, let's say you have a team meeting and there's a bad atmosphere in the team. So you just enter the room and you breathe in. You feel the claustrophobic negative energy and you let it in. You breathe it in. You don't breathe it in into the egoic process. You breathe it in into the Buddha nature, into the sky. Into the sky. Sky. The sky-like nature of your mind. It's just an image.
Okay.
Yeah. And the egoic process, of course, will say, no, don't do that. You need to fight. These are bad people. Yeah. So
for me, it can be also confusing because maybe at the same time somebody's criticizing you in an angry way, but at a rational level you still try to understand what is true about this, what can I learn from this. So not just doing the Tonglen side, but then you actually try to understand what is behind this.
Yeah.
So you want to learn from this.
Yeah, but isn't that something you would do like when you have some space? Like, I mean, then it would be like kind of go into the rational mind and, think about the situation and so on. If you try to figure out the psychological history of a person right there on the spot and what that has to do with your psychological history, then you need like an hour. Yeah. So this is like more like it's more like an instant, more like it's not like a rational process. It's helpful to do this, this kind of reflection, maybe after, or go into a conversation with this person. But for this practice, it's not necessary. You don't need to know details. So that's the in-breath. And then the out-breath is with, so you give into the situation what is needed from your Buddha nature, from the Dalai Lama. And what is, of course, needed can be a bit different, but I mean, in generally, it's compassion. Like, space, relief. So that also means that you don't add to the violence in the situation. And if you add violence to the situation, the situation escalates. So if you shoot back to a person who has criticized you, it will just go out of control. And with that you make a difference in the team meeting, in the conversation, because you don't add your shit. You own it. You own your shit. And that makes it difficult because we prefer other people to experience our shit. No, I don't want to be with my pain. I don't want to be with my pain to be heard. I want you to feel it. You should carry it. That's where violence comes from. Yeah? We don't want to stay with hurt. So we want to make other people hurt. We want to pass it on.
Because you want to get rid of it.
You want to get rid of it, yes. So, and then so that's the third step, like the giving relief. And then the fourth step is to extend. Yeah? So that would be, let's say you do a Tonglen practice for someone who is suffering, or you do, it's always good, of course, to start Tonglen practice with yourself. Yeah? So with your own struggle, with your own difficult feelings, breathing in, giving yourself what is needed. But then in the fourth step, you make this, and the fourth step in a nutshell is, I'm not alone with this. This is not personal. There's many people who right now have a health issue, the same health issue, and even worse, just, in this part of, where are we? Zurich. Just in this part of Zurich. Yeah? So it's like from, oh, me and my problem and this difficult relationship and I'm criticized. It's like, yeah, I'm not alone with this. And then you can even add a bit of a aspiration, something like, so may my openness to this situation, may this relieve all the people who are suffering from the same. So if you're doing Tonglen with yourself, may this experience of anxiety and my work with it, may this relieve the anxiety of all people. May they all be free. And you don't need to believe in the power of prayer or something. It's just this making it less personal, like opening the space, taking this additional suffering, why me, to take that out. Why is this happening to me? So if that falls away, then... So that's the 4 steps.
And these steps, when somebody works with blah, but they actually expect an answer.
Yeah, so that's...
So, okay, I can say...
Yeah, this is also an...
you will be...
This is also an important point. This is an important point, because sometimes when people hear this kind of practices or they hear about acceptance, it's kind of heard as if we should be passive. But that's not, this is not happen. It can happen if you do it in a kind of spiritual bypassing way. But actually, what the goal is to respond to the situation in a more appropriate way.
Yeah.
And an appropriate way could be to kick ass. But the kicking of that damn ass doesn't come from your reactivity.
Yeah.
It comes because it is the appropriate situation. Because we are in a world and in a situation where it's not good enough to say, oh please, Could you please stop? That's not enough. But there is a big difference of coming from reactivity and self-righteousness and wanting to hurt the poor person.
Because the answer is
Or yeah, it can be from outside. It can look as if there's anger.
yeah.
It can look, and it is kind of anger, but it is a kind of it can be a healthy aggression. Yeah. So actually, with this practice of trying to come to respond instead of to react, you become actually you get probably better into the direction you want to go than if you shoot, because the person is much more likely responding or listening or
Yeah. But this is a very, very fast process.
yeah, you train it in a formal. You train it in a formal way.
Is
Yeah?
maybe the other person doesn't even know. I tried this. It really has a power. There is a power behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did try this. Like somebody hurts or say something in a tone of voice, and just breathing, but this other person will not even recognize, and the answer is completely different than when I would just react and yeah, because I used to be like that. I could really react. And
I can see that.
Yeah.
That's you are Bulgarian, or where are you from? No.
What is the?
No, because you have like a fire, you know? And it has often to do with the ethnic background. Yeah? So I'm not. I like it. Yeah. So
you go there tonight.
I go there tonight. Yeah. But
to the fire.
Yeah, to the fire.
To Buddhahood.
Yeah. What? So you train this in a formal way. So you establish the processes, and then you bring this into this kind of situations. But also you can work, like let's say you already know there will be this difficult team meeting in the future tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So then you do Tonglen from like into the past, into the future. Mm-hmm. Like, so you prepare yourself, and then we fail as usually. Yeah. So and then we do the Tonglen practice after again. So we work with the situation after. So we can do Tonglen with a situation we are in right now. We can do Tonglen with past events. So it's a wonderful way to work with some hurt you still have, or some situation you want to let go of. You can also practice Tonglen with future events, and you can practice Tonglen with yourself. You can practice Tonglen with a certain person. You can practice Tonglen with certain situations. You can, and then the fourth step is then always to make it bigger, even if it's it feels a bit like I'm just making these words. It's just like you open it up, and you say a little prayer. May all teams in this world be free of this kind of unconstructive communication. So you open that.
When you, in the third step, when you wish, let's say, for example, compassion, do you wish it to yourself, to the other person, to both of you?
To the whole situation.
To
yeah.
You just pray.
Yeah. To the so. I mean, ideally, if you manage to step kind of back into Buddha nature, so then, I mean, then actually saying, or you give it to yourself and the other person doesn't make sense, because there is the situation, and the situation is seen by Buddha nature, and you give what is needed to the whole system. And what you call yourself, you is part of that system, but you are not in there in that moment. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a break. It's quite late. Is 1 hour and 10 minutes enough? Yeah. Okay. So then we continue at 3 o'clock.